Welcome. Today we're going to talk about the book firsts tag. I guess I just made it up, so that's what I'm calling it. The book firsts tag. This is the book tag, a series of questions about books that you loved, that were your firsts in certain ways, whatever ways. We'll get to some questions and a free one at the end. So let's dig into the book firsts here. Buckle up. Now, my first question in the book firsts book tag is, what was the first book you remember falling in love with? And for me, it was by Stephen R. Lawhead, and it was Arthur. I remember getting it. I would have been before 14. That's all I know, because we moved when I was 14. So I remember reading it over Christmas at this kitchen table in my house and just falling in love with it. It's the third in his Pendragon cycle. When I got the book, it was the third in his Pendragon trilogy. But then it, expanded to two more books, which are of okay quality. But Stephen R. Lawhead's Arthur, I just remember loving it. Like, it was, an Arthur story and adventure, and had some strong faith overtones. It's not overtones. It's written by a Christian dude. It's got a lot of faith in it. And I just really enjoyed it. I was before 14, really, really liked that book. I don't have a copy of it anymore because the copy I had was like super dog-eared and I didn't care about it at that point. I'm not even sure that I'd buy it again. If I was going to buy it, I'd be looking for a nice hard copy of it. So anyway, that was good. And I have read the entire cycle saga thing, and it was pretty good. The first three books are the best. Taliesin, is it Merlin Taliesin? I think it's Taliesin, Merlin, and Arthur. And then there's some other ones after that, which are okay. But those three are good. And they're written to, that was the original concept of the three books. And then there's two more afterwards. So anyway, next up, what was the first book that made you aspire to read, like that you started looking at and reading and being like, oh, I want to be a reader that can tackle that type of book? And then question, did you read it? For me, it was, let's hear this, Madeleine Angle, A Wrinkle in Time. I remember reading it. I don't remember why I put it down, because maybe I was scared. I don't remember what age I was when I first wanted to read this book, but I remember starting it and being like, nope, that's too much for me. And I had a white copy with like a Pegasus on the front is what I remember. This is not my copy. I think this is my wife's copy. Say in it? Does it say in it? It doesn't say in it. Whose book? Oh, it's just a family copy. It's from the Bookman locally. So Bookman means we were married already when we got it. So it's a family copy. I don't know who bought it. Who cares? It just made me aspire. Read it. I was like, oh, I can see there's so much I want to read in that, but I just wasn't ready for it yet. Again, maybe I was too scared. Maybe it was just too much for me when I was a kid. But I've read it multiple times now. Great book. That was the first one that really made me, I looked at it and was like, I want to be a reader that can tackle that type of book. A book with those whatever themes, those genres, whatever it is in there. So, and again, doesn't have to be fiction, doesn't have to be nonfiction. I don't care what it is you want. Just what book made you aspire to be a reader. Next up, what was the first book you put down thinking that it said everything that you'd been thinking in a while, that it kind of summarized all the thoughts that you had, where you're like, oh, that book, that was just blew your mind. It was amazing. Again, not fiction or nonfiction, I don't care. For me, it was Deep Work. I read this shortly after it came out, I think. I could look up the review, and I will put the review date down here. I read it just before that. I haven't actually read this copy yet. I read it digitally first, and then I got it in hardcover recently when I saw it on sale somewhere. So this was written in first edition 2016. I feel like I read it right around then when it first came out. But again, the date's below to confirm or deny my memory. I finished this and I thought, oh, that's exactly what I've been going for. So Deep Work is about focus, really getting good focus time for yourself, and not killing time with a myriad of distractions, really focusing down on the things that you want to do, producing good work by focusing and cutting out distractions. That's what it's about. And I had been really working to that for a long time. I had already only took meetings on Tuesdays. Now I only do them on Fridays, but only took meetings on Tuesdays. I had limited a lot of stuff like that. My wife and I had some discussions around what constituted a reason to contact me while I was working. It's easy when you work at home, right? I'm sitting in my office. You can maybe hear my kids thumping around upstairs too. Because that's one bad point about my office. The kitchen is directly above it. So that's it. If I was up at the top floor, then you wouldn't hear them. But you do. yeah, so we had already talked a lot about what it meant to be like to contact me and why you could come into my office and why you couldn't come into my office. And she's a figure skating coach. She wasn't working at the time, but like I don't just like step onto the ice to be like, hey, I need you to like, can you open this jar for me? Stuff like that. So we had some long talks about that, and this really got a lot deeper into it and just let me commit to maybe the license to commit to saying no to a lot more things, being a lot more focused, and just like now I don't answer my phone lots of the time because it's for me to contact you, not necessarily for you to contact me. So it's quite often that I ignore my phone. And I block now that we're in the middle of COVID and we're sitting around at home a lot. Like I just leave it down in my office and charge it. It's not in my bedroom. Hasn't been in my bedroom in years. Even my bedroom was in the office. I'd charge it downstairs in the kitchen because that was a better spot for it. So Deep Work is the first one that really, I finished it and was like, oh, that's it. Like, that's the book that it just has said so much that I've been thinking for so long, and it's an excellent book. So I've read it at least 2 times in digital, and then I will go back through and mark this one up and sticky tag it and stuff like that, and just like write down more thoughts. And then I may or may not review it again. I will probably just definitely just read it. I just did that with So Good They Can't Ignore You as well by Cal Newport, which I've read before. And I've read Digital Minimalism as well. So I've read his 3 main books that are more targeted at me. So Deep Work, good book. First book that really let me, when I finished it, I was like, oh, that's like everything. Oh, that's like perfect. Everything I've been thinking just seems to coalesce inside the author's mind right here. And I was like totally on board with what he had to say. Good book. I recommend it highly. Next up, draft's cleared. Where'd it go? Book first. There we go. Book firsts. So what was the first? Oh no. Number 4. What's the first book you put down and thought this was terrible? Why did everybody like this book? I actually talked about this book recently already when I did this. I think it was a Star Trek book tag. When there it said, "What's the one that divided the fandom or divided?" And I came up with this book. It's the same book, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I don't know if it divided his fandom, but I got it recommended by someone I like, and they said it'll be a great book, and I read it, and I was like, "This is a terrible book. It's a terrible book." It's like whiny men whining about why I should be able to whine as a white dude. That's what it's about. Like there's one in here talking about, I don't know if I can find the quote. I folded the page, but I don't know if I can find it that quick. Where it talks about like women can make us feel shame, and this is terrible, by rejecting us men. And I was like, seriously, like women deal with so much terrible stuff at the hands of men and have for so long, and like this guy's supposed to be an academic, and there's like citations not around at all. It's just, here's my opinion on stuff, you should take it, I'm right. It's terrible. On the face of it, like reading the rules, I think like the title of the rules is really good, and if I look at the rules, I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Stand up straight with your shoulders back, like be confident. Okay, great. Treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. We are quite often, if you say, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll do this, or I should, go to sleep. And you're like, well, would you tell someone that would you let the kids stay up this late and have this little sleep? Well, no. Okay, well, come on, treat yourself like someone you're trying to help. Make friends with people who want the best for you. Like, they all are good rules when you first read this, and you start reading through the whole thing, and you're like, you didn't cite anything. There's no, like, this is just true. I say it's true, so it's true. And there's a lot of misogynistic tones in here that are terrible. So I read Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life and thought this is a terrible book. I don't like it at all. I think it's a bad book. I'm going to reread it, I think, based on my friend, another friend's recommendation, and he really loved it. And I've loved a lot of the books that he's suggested. So I will read it again. I might get one from the library or buy digital copies. I'm not like tainted by my old notes, but again, like this feeling is pretty strong. So I'm not sure how much that is. I'm keeping the book around though, because I think it's a good example of a terrible book, and I would probably reread it and maybe use it again as like, this is a terrible book, and here's why. Here's all the things that are just like weak in it that I don't like, and that like it says I say something, and so it must be true. That's not how it works, man. You're an academic. You should know better than that. So the book that I read and thought this is terrible, and everyone loves it. What? That's this one, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Terrible book. Don't buy it. Yeah, I don't think you should buy it anyways. It's a bad book. Next up, the question 5 for your book firsts. What was the first book you bought multiple copies of just because one was pretty? I did this with these 2 books here. I have this nice copy of The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. It's just a nice hardback copy. It's got, I don't know, whatever the kind of the ragged edge pages are. I forgot what the name of that is. It's a nice hardcover book. Nothing fancy about it necessarily. The cover's pretty. Nothing like outstanding about it necessarily, but it's a nice book. Like I got it, I was like, oh, I'm happy I have this book. I have a good copy of this book to read for myself. This is perfect because I had only ever had it digitally. But I read this and I was like, or I got this and I was like, perfect. This is what I want. This is like, my library feels completed now. Don't need to go get anything else. Well, you know where this is going. And then I was sitting at the Bookman, got that one from the Bookman too, and found this copy of The Ocean at the End of the Lane. And I thought, oh, I'll just look at it. It's a neat cover. I'll just flip through it quick. And I flipped through it and was like, oh, wow. And I looked at my daughter's like, so Eden, we'd already read this. Should I get this book? And here's why. There's illustrations everywhere in it. Like, every couple pages is illustrated. I brought it home. My wife was like, don't we have that book? I think I read it to Eden already. And I said, we do. But look. And I showed my wife and she's like, okay. That's just pretty. And there's like, there's not even a lot of like detail on a lot of the drawings necessarily, right? Like I couldn't tell you what the story is there, just flipping through. So I've never actually read this copy of it yet. But the illustrations, I just like read it and was like, I've got to have it. I've got to have that. And I bought my second copy of it. That's not the first time I bought a book just because it looked nice. I bought, what is it? Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles Illustrated Man and something about apples and the sun. I forget what it's called. I bought that just because I turned around on the shelf and I was like, ooh, that's really pretty. And I bought it because it was really pretty and it's beautiful, like leather. I've shown it off before. I don't have it down here, else I just show it to you. It's upstairs. But it's a beautiful science fiction book, leather bound with, it's just nice, a nice little red ribbon in it. And I'm working my way through that. Okay, so question 6. What was the first book you finished? And then just started again right away. So I don't own a copy of this book either. I have it digitally. But it's The Martian. I forgot who it's by right now. Andy Weir. The Martian by Andy Weir. I finished it on a flight. And I finished it as we touched down in Phoenix, Arizona for a conference. And I thought that was excellent. And then I switched and put on the next one. I started it right over again, and my friend and I were going to catch a cab together. He was flying in from Portland, and so I knew he was coming in 20 minutes later, and I knew where his gate was, and I just walked over to his gate and hung out there and started listening to the book again. I listened to it twice right away, and it was stellar. Really loved the book. I was actually super disappointed in Artemis. I read Artemis and was like, it's okay. It's a book. That's all. It's just a book. I don't know what else to say about it. I didn't like it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the story. But I'm super disappointed because The Martian, I was like, this is stellar. And my wife watched the movie. She might read the book. I think I could convince her to read the book. Or tell her this is if you're going to try it, this is another good science fiction. She liked Ender's Game. She liked a few other science fiction books, but by and large, it's not her thing. But The Martian would be one. She watched the movie and she's like, oh, that was a good movie. I enjoyed it. And I watched it again. She's like, oh, no, I still like that. It was a good movie. And the book is just stellar. I love The Martian. Great. I will go over it again. I'm sure this summer. I'm catching up on my podcast as we're running more. And I will absolutely going back over The Martian by Andy Weir. First book that really I was like, oh, I gotta read this again right now. And I just read it again. Now my 7th question is kind of your choice. Tell me about a book first of your choice. And so for me, it's going to be the first adult series I shared with my kids, and that would be Alvin Maker. I only have 2 of the books, but I have them all in audiobook from Audible. So I grabbed, this is Alvin Journeyman. I'm collecting, nice hardcovers of the series that I like. I own digitally in Kindle, I own audiobook, and then I'm buying these. Alvin Journeyman, I shared it with her, honestly, because we were going skiing when she was 5, 6, 5? I don't know. Young, 5 or 6. And we were going skiing, and oh my goodness, it was just nonstop. Dad, what about this dad? What about this dad? What about this dad? And we were leaving at 6:30 in the morning so we could get up there for first lift and we could get her to her lessons and stuff. And I was just like, I can't deal with this. This is too much noise. So I put on a book, and knowing that it's a bit of an adult book, talks about slavery, talks a bit about sex. And I was like, and she loved it. She would listen to the entire series that winter. Almost the entire series that winter, and then we listened to, we always call it BOD, but The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman as well. We listened to that one, and she fell in love with that. We've listened to that multiple times. We haven't listened to Neverwhere yet because it's just a little too much for her, I think. But we'll get there. And we've read Ocean at the End of the Lane together. Yeah, I started this series simply because I didn't want to listen to a kid's book anymore. And I was tired of like a million questions on the way up the skiing. That's the only reason she got to, partake in these books. But she loves them. She's read them multiple times. She's read this hardcover, I think, and I have Crystal City as well. The current last book, although there's another one coming. So she's read both of the hardcovers that I have here as well, and has enjoyed it. And I would encourage her to look at some other Orson Scott Card stuff as she gets a little older for some of it, like Ender's Game, or Homecoming Earth. I forget the name of the saga. The Homecoming Saga, maybe? I've got book 4 and 5, and it's called Homecoming Earth right over there. An omnibus edition. It's on my shelf. I was looking at the slipcover, which is on my shelf too. Different shelves because I'm reading the book. Yeah, this is the book that I really, the first book that I introduced my kids to a more adult-oriented reading level, right? We were past Harry Potter, we were past some other stuff, and we were going to look like, let's find something this is just something I enjoy, an adult book that I enjoy, not a kid's book, because I'm tired of those. So that's it for my book firsts. I am going to tag anyone who wants to do it. I don't know who watches me from BookTube, so who will actually see it, and I don't know how to tag you any other way. So I think the Bookish Bryants watch. That's the only person that watches. So if you do anything about books, feel free to do the book first tag. The questions will be below. Question 7 is your choice. A book first of some fashion. The first old book you bought to collect. So it's another tag I'm going to do coming up. Kind of like the extremes of your book buying. What's the oldest book you have? What's the book you've read the most? What's the newest book you have? What's the book that's been sitting on your shelf the longest? You've just been saying, I'll totally read this, and you haven't read it yet. So I will have to guess at a few of those, but I do know a few of them too. My oldest book is, I can grab it, I'll show you. Quest in Paradise by David Attenborough. That's my oldest book. This is an original copy, and it was written in 59. Part 1 is 59, Part 2 is 1960. So, Quest in Paradise is about cargo culting. Is the main thing that I really want to read in this, is how the villagers, islanders, worshipped literally cargo. Because I thought, that's where that idea came from. I read another book where that idea came from. And I thought, I will look at that. So that's my big thing. That's my oldest book in my library. But I'll do a whole tag on that, on your book extremes, the oldest book, the newest book, the longest book, all that stuff. Now, the most expensive book, probably, as well. I've got 2 candidates. I got to look up what their current prices are. Yeah. Have a good day. If you like the video, you give me a thumbs up. If you love the video, subscribe, and I guess hit the bell so that YouTube tells you when I put out new videos. But turn off notifications on your phones and your devices, because you got better things to do, like read a book, hang out with your kids, than just wait for some video from me. Have a good day.